Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is November 20th. We're nearing the end of the year, and there's a lot going on in Iraq, which we'll be discussing. One other thing I want to mention before we get started. We've been inundated with contacts from all manner of people for all manner of reasons. We're a little bit behind in getting back with everyone. I apologize for that, but we're doing the best that we can. Because most people are of the view that we're near the end, our contacts are, over 100 a day. So, we're doing the best we can, and when this call is over, I'll be right back on the phone. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Well, we do have a lot to discuss today, so let's get started. But I want to start by talking about the recent presidential election we had, because I think that this election was timely for a number of reasons. One example is a recent comment by Soudani. Soudani said that the Iraqi dinar will have purchasing power before the end of the year, and that the value of the Iraqi dinar will exceed that of Kuwait. And the Kuwaiti dinar is worth somewhere around $3.25 in that area. So he's telling us that the Iraqi dinar is probably going to be worth close to $4, and that seems to be about right. I don't know that we'll be in the banks until January, but if we take the man at his word, this is going to happen. That being the case, and what I'm about to say right now has to do with the welfare of the nation, not dinarians per se, although we're going to be in pretty good shape no matter what. But I think the election of Donald Trump is going to be better for the nation, because I think the money will be utilized for its proper purposes rather than more spending, more debt if Kamala Harris had been elected. And the reason I say that is because Donald Trump is a very unique individual. I can't think of a Republican or a Democrat that would have survived the withering assault that he has been under since he came down the escalator 8 or 9 years ago. We had Trump-Russia collusion. We had 2 impeachments. We had these ridiculous civil cases in New York. The man was banned from Twitter. His home was invaded. He's been indicted and convicted of a ridiculous crime that the judge recently decided he was going to hold off on the sentencing. In my opinion, the reason he's held off on the sentencing is so that Donald Trump cannot appeal the case. This was a case of a misdemeanor beyond the statute of limitation that was bootstrapped to 34 felonies in New York. The case is a joke. Every honorable, reputable lawyer knows it's a joke. And despite that, the man just keeps coming. He's even survived 2 assassination attempts, both triggered individuals due to the nonsense being uttered by individuals on the left. But the reason I bring that up is because it's going to make a difference in this country and for us individually, particularly those of us that have currencies. Why do I say that? Well, let me give you a hint. When Donald Trump first took office and entered the Oval Office, he carried something in with him. It was a bust. It was a bust of Andrew Jackson. Well, who was Andrew Jackson? Andrew Jackson was a hero of the Battle of New Orleans and a president of the United States. The Battle of New Orleans was a battle which basically ended the War of 1812. The War of 1812 was the war when Britain invaded the newly formed United States. Now, most people think, and to some extent this is true, that the reason was because the British would like to have brought the colonies back into the empire rather than having the creation of the United States, the Federation of States. But that wasn't the impetus for the War of 1812. The impetus for the War of 1812 was that the United States did not renew its 20-year contract with the Bank of London and created their own currency. And when you utilize the currency of another central bank, you pay interest on that money. So by refusing to renew the contract with the Bank of London, England lost all of the interest that they'd received for compelling the newly formed United States to use their currency. So we had the War of 1812. We were successful in expelling Britain. But Andrew Jackson did something else. After the War of 1812, the United States was so deep in debt that they were compelled to re-up with the Bank of London in 1816 to pay off their debt. And 20 years later, President Andrew Jackson ended the second central bank of London in the United States. So, in his own way, Donald Trump was telling us what he intended. He intended to end the Federal Reserve. Once Andrew Jackson ended the second central bank, the United States operated without a central bank until 1913, when it was reestablished once again by Woodrow Wilson, a leftist who believed in Keynesian economics. I don't want to get into the depth of all of that, but he created the Federal Reserve. And along with the Federal Reserve, they created the federal income tax in order to pay the interest on the money produced by the Federal Reserve. Well, Donald Trump's plan is to end the Federal Reserve, and that is why the left has been hell-bent to remove him by whatever means necessary. Fortunately, they've failed. One of the reasons that I believe the failure is complete is because no matter what happens to Donald Trump, people are aware of what he's doing and why. In addition, if something happens to Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance will take his place. If something happens to J.D. Vance, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson will take his place. And in both cases, they're well aware of what Donald Trump was planning to do. This is Donald Trump's presidency. And J.D. Vance and Mike Johnson will honor that and fulfill the president's primary objective. But the assault on this country goes beyond the presidency of Donald Trump. The Bill of Rights has been under assault for some time. From the left, the First Amendment, assault on the First Amendment through censorship. Assault on the Second Amendment has been going on since it was created. As a matter of fact, there have been more attempts to amend or repeal the Second Amendment than all other amendments combined. Presidential candidate Kamala Harris said one of the things she was going to institute was a federal mandated gun buyback program, which of course is a grotesque violation of the Second Amendment. Then there's the privacy of the Fourth Amendment. And the creation of the central bank digital currency would have monitored all of our purchases and liquidity, which is a violation, a grotesque violation of the Fourth Amendment. And then we have the amendments that were violated in the case of Donald Trump. The Fifth Amendment right to due process, the Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial, and the Eighth Amendment right to no excessive fines. A president of the United States was denied his Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment rights. So if they're going to attempt to take away our First Amendment right to free speech, our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, our Fourth Amendment right to privacy, and our Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment rights to due process and speedy trial and no excessive fines, if they're going to do that to a sitting president, then you know what they have in store for us. So this election was very important for Dinarians because Donald Trump's administration will make sure that if the Iraqi dinar is not on the Forex before January 20th, it will be shortly thereafter. And that's why I say January is for me, the backstop. If it happens sooner than that, wonderful. If it happens this year, wonderful. If it happens tomorrow, wonderful. But again, and finally, the election of Donald Trump, in my view, ensures that this is going to happen, and it's going to happen very soon. Now, what's going on in Iraq? A lot. We have passage of the HCL. The budget's nearly done, and Article 140. Now, today is the first day of the census in Iraq, and the purpose for the census is for the distribution of funds pursuant to the HCL. We also see the project to delete the zeros, the end of the auctions on January 31st, which means the end of corruption. Now, the deletion of the zeros, very simply, means a substantial reduction in the money supply in country. A reduction in the money supply necessarily means an increase in the value of the money, and that's without a change in the exchange rate. It's just money supply versus goods and services. The goods and services in country have been increasing, and now they're looking at a substantial reduction in the money supply. Now, you would think that would be inflationary, but it's not, because the value of the money will increase, meaning we don't need we don't need billions and trillions of dinars to function, because the currency will be worth substantially more. Now, again, what did Soudani tell us? He told us that the Iraqi dinar would revalue this year, and he told us it would be worth more than the Kuwaiti dinar. The Kuwaiti dinar is the richest currency, most valuable currency against the U.S. dollar today, and he's telling us that when the Iraqi dinar revalues to its proper value, it will be the strongest currency against the U.S. dollar in the world. So that's very good news. Now, in Donald Trump's second term, and the reason I'm bringing Donald Trump up, not just because we recently had an election, but because the things that he's promising to do will have a direct effect on us, whether we're Dinarians or not. He promised that America would enter a new golden age. What's he referring to? Well, he's referring to something that he's planning on doing, and that's the reintroduction of tariffs. Not only that, the reintroduction of tariffs with a substantial reduction in the federal income tax. He's already given us some hints of what he's going to do. He's not going to tax tips. He's not going to tax overtime. He's not going to tax Social Security. So he's starting to take away the allowance that the federal government's received vis-a-vis the federal income tax. Interestingly enough, when Social Security was created, it was not federally taxed until a senator introduced a bill to tax Social Security. That senator was Joe Biden. So this guy's a bad penny that keeps showing up. The only satisfaction I have in what he's done to this country is he will go down in history probably as the worst president of all time, which is a relief to a number of other Democrats. But it's just been abysmal. And Kamala Harris would have even been worse. But again, when Trump talks about a golden age, he's talking about a couple of things. I think he's talking about reducing the size of government, eliminating or substantially reducing the federal debt, and introducing tariffs as an income stream to the federal government. Now, this would be the second golden age of the United States. The first golden age, meaning when the United States was its richest, was in a period of time between 1880 and 1910, a time of great wealth. And the federal government operated exclusively on tariffs and bonds. So what Trump's really trying to say is we don't really need a federal income tax if this is done properly. Well, this is absolute anathema to the left, not only because they want the revenue from the income tax, but they use the income tax to socially engineer what is deductible, what's not deductible, what is a penalty, what's not a penalty, confiscatory taxation of certain groups against other groups. It's obvious that what they were trying to do, we're basically going to take that away. So the second golden age would end the Federal Reserve. Pursuant to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, we'd return to a people's currency of sound money, be a reaffirmation of the Bill of Rights, radically shrinking the government and government expenditures, becoming energy dominant, and that's critical because the price of just about everything at its base is the cost of energy, the cost to produce, deliver, and distribute. So to become energy dominant means that we will see the prices of everything drop substantially. And globally, it would probably mean the rebirth of the U.S. dollar because it'll be much stronger than it is right now. Now, I have a question. I get this question all the time from people that are interested in buying currencies, that want to buy more currencies, that are very skeptical of the dinar as an investment, and I always call it a speculative investment. But the reason I like the investment is because the downside is negligible and the upside is huge. So the question I'm asked, how is it possible for an American citizen to purchase the Iraqi dinar for next to nothing on the prospect of going to a bank at some point in time in the future and exchanging that currency for millions? Well, the answer is a little bit complicated. What's happening right now has never happened before, and it's never going to happen again, which is why people can't understand it. And what do I mean by a perfect storm? Well, I first must begin by saying that, in my opinion, Iraq, per square mile, is the richest country in the world. They have the second largest known oil reserves in the Middle East. They have the sweetest crude, meaning that it has the lowest sulfur content, meaning that it's much more easily refined. And this is important because, contrary to what people think, only about a third of refined petroleum is used in the combustion engine. Fully 2/3 of it is used for the production of glass, plastics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and nanotechnologies. In short, there's not enough wind and solar in the universe to produce the smartphone you're listening to this call on. But despite the fact that Iraq has the sweetest crude, meaning has the lowest sulfur content, Iraq has the largest known sulfur reserves in the Middle East and top 5 in the world. Why is that important? Because sulfur is necessary for the production of sulfuric acid, which is an indispensable product for any number of industrial applications. So Iraq has it coming and going. Add to that Iraq is right there in the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta. And over eons, as the silk has flown down from the Caucasus mountain range in Iran, which is another reason why it's Iran just keeps coming up short. The silt has left precious and industrial metals, rare earth metals, and all kinds of other natural resources necessary in a modern world. So, lastly, geopolitically, Iraq's location. It's a buffer between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It's the gateway between the Middle East, or rather the East and the West. And this is why China, over the last few years, has over 100 contracts within Iran. The reason is that Iran is, because it's the gateway between the East and the West, it's a critical component to China's Silk Road Initiative. So whether it's the natural resources in the country or the geopolitical location of the country, as I said, for all of these reasons, in my opinion, Iraq per square mile is the richest country in the world. Now, again, the question, how is it possible for us to purchase the IQD for next to nothing and exchange it in the future for millions? Well, I've given you the on-the-ground information about Iraq, but there's something else going on politically as well. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, he was expelled from Kuwait, and his currency was put into a program rate. So remember, Iraq, that is one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest country in the world, has a worthless currency. You and I purchased that currency for next to nothing. A couple of years after this occurred, and I mean the expulsion of Saddam Hussein from Kuwait and their currency going into a program rate, a global program began. It's called Basel Compliance. It's a 5-phased program beginning in 1988. We are now entering Basel IV. What this means is they are equalizing the currencies of nations globally by basing the currencies on the known natural resources in that country and their ability to bring those resources to market. So we purchased the Iraqi dinar when it was worth next to nothing because their currency was placed in a program rate. And while we have patiently and sometimes impatiently waited for this currency to reinstitute, we have gone through 4 of the 5 phases of Basel compliance, meaning that if we go to the bank by the end of January of next year, we will be exchanging our worthless dinar for a Basel IV compliant rate. Now, I've discussed this in the past. Based on the currency speculators that I know and I've worked with in the past, they're estimating that the Iraqi dinar should be somewhere in the area of $4.85. I'm thinking realistically that we will probably go to the bank. If we don't go the very day it hits the 4X, if we wait maybe even 10 days, we're probably looking at about $4. So you purchased $1 million dinar for $950, and you exchanged it for $4 million. Well, of course, people that don't follow this say to you, well, that's impossible. No, it's not, and I just explained to you why. It's never happened before. It's never going to happen again, but it is possible, and that's the math. So, why are Dinarians talking to Jim George and Trusts Unlimited about our Family Asset Protection Trust package? Well, one of the reasons probably is they're moving around just seeing what anyone has to say about currencies, and they stumbled across Trusts Unlimited. Another reason, individuals that are somewhat aware of estate planning or decided that they want to investigate trusts, heard about Trusts Unlimited. But for whatever reason, individuals have been kind enough to listen in, have purchased currencies and continue to listen. Many of them have purchased our trust package, and they will be very happy with the results after the revaluation for a number of reasons. So why purchase our trust package? I would argue that it doesn't matter whether you have currencies or not. The fact that you have currencies or any asset that you think is going to substantially increase in value is a reason to set this trust up and assign those assets, whatever they may be. We have a lot of clients that have a lot of cryptocurrencies, and I think some of those are going to pop big time as well. But let's explain very basically how the trust package works and what the benefits are. By establishing this trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. Why? Because the assets within this trust package are sealed, and no one will know your holdings or your net worth. The second reason you'd want to set this up is because it would allow you to avoid personal IRS scrutiny. Not only does the trust package provide certain tax deferral benefits to you, but the business transactions are occurring within the trust. You're merely the beneficiary, the dividends and interest and some of the assets within the trust, but the trust owns those assets, and it would be the trust that the IRS would be looking at. Well, the IRS goes after the low-hanging fruit. They usually don't go after a sophisticated trust package with the proper assumption you also have sophisticated legal counsel. They like, again, the low-hanging fruit. So they tend to avoid sophisticated trust packages. This is why wealthy individuals, politicians, even the Hollywood types have all of their assets in trust. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on doing gifting. Now, for those that don't have currencies but have substantial means, one of the things they'll do is they'll purchase homes, cars, boats, etc., and they will allow friends and family members the use of those assets. But if you're a denarian, one of the things a lot of denarians want to do is they want to gift currencies to family and friends that they want to help out. But several years ago, we kept getting calls from family members that were saying, I'd like to leave money to, X, Y, or Z, but they have certain problems. I'm just hesitant to give them a lump sum. Well, we went back to the lawyers. I went back to the lawyers, and we decided to create our gift subtrust, which is one of the trusts within our package. What this gift subtrust allows you to do is to gift currencies to family and friends pre-RV in order to avoid the federal gift tax, but it gives you complete control of the post-RV proceeds, meaning that you can manage, invest, and distribute this money to the individuals as you deem appropriate given their situation. The fourth thing this trust package does, it allows you to avoid the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. By avoiding probate, no one will know the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. Once again, that information is sealed. But it also allows you to avoid the federal estate tax. The federal estate tax is the tax that's assessed on the transfer of your estate to heirs. The federal estate tax under current law can be as much as 65% of your estate, in excess of $12 million. However, if your assets are in this trust and transferred through this trust, the federal estate tax is zero, meaning that your heirs will privately receive 100 cents on a dollar of whatever is in that estate. And the last thing that the trust does, it provides certain asset protection benefits both pre- and post-RV. Pre-RV, there's a benefit referred to as Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, which we can avoid. What do I mean by that? It means you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title. So let's say, as an example, you purchased 10 million dinar for $10,000, transferred the currencies to our trust, and let's say conservatively they revalued for $1, $10 million. You now have 10 million in trust. Can you be sued for 10 million? No. Why? Because pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, they were only worth 10,000 when you transferred them out of title to our trust package. This is the only way you can avoid the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. You can't do it with an LLC, a sub-S corporation, or anything else. It can only be done through the trust. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth, and it limits any potential civil litigation. As an example, you purchase, let's say the case of the 10 million dinar you purchased, it's worth $10 million after the revaluation, you would assign the currencies to the trust. So now you make some purchases, another home, a vacation home, a couple of cars, etc. Well, how does this protect you? Well, as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by your master trust. So if someone, for example, slips and falls and break their back in one of your rental properties, or if you have an accident in your car and it's your fault, the individual suing you can only go after the asset itself, which is in one of the sub-trusts. But your other assets are safe and secure in the other sub-trusts. Why? Because under the law, those are separate legal entities having nothing whatsoever to do with the incident in question. So your trust package works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your asset protection trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies so that you can transfer the pre-RV currency out of title and to the trust. Now, this trust package was originally a package that we've utilized for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to mass market the trust package to denarians, we knew that price tag would be unaffordable for too many. So by simplifying the initial package and not funding it, and there's no reason to fund it pre-RV anyway, we have reduced the cost to $3,000. You would simply create the trust and then assign your currencies to the master trust, leaving all of the funding of the sub-trust to be done post-RV. The cost of this trust has been reduced from anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 to $2,500. Pay us up front. The price tag is one-time only price of $2,500. We even have a deferred payment arrangement for those that simply cannot afford the $2,500. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid with $100 monthly installments. So anyone who understands the need for getting their trust enforced and their affairs in order pre-RV should be able to afford to do so. I'm going to go to the Q&A in just a moment. But before I do, let me find my last page here. There's something else I wanted to basically discuss. Give me just one moment here. Well, there was something else I wanted to discuss, and I can't seem to locate the information that I wanted to share with you, so that's going to have to wait until next week. But I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A for any questions. And while I'm waiting for any questions, I want to give you our contact information. You can contact us either by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. And I think I'm going to hold off on the phone number. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we have been so inundated with calls. We just need to catch up with those calls. The attorneys are listening. They're probably not happy about my giving you the phone number, but I'm the one that answers the calls. And I've got over 100 people that I have to contact. And so I'm going to hold off on getting our phone number out. But if you're hell-bent on contacting us, you can do it by email. We'll be happy to send you our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but again, you're under no obligation to do so. You can contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. When you submit your trust package and your fee, we'll send you an email stating we received the fee. If there's any issue with the application, we'll review it with you, and it'll go immediately to the paralegals. Once it goes to the paralegal, we should have it in your hands within 72 hours. So let's go to our calls. Our first caller here is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think we may have World War III before Trump actually gets in because of what happened in the Ukraine?
I don't think so, because I think Donald Trump is already talking to a lot of people, both domestically and internationally. And I don't want to get into my suspicions other than to say it seems very suspicious to me that the Biden administration is starting to poke Russia in the eye after the election. I don't want to get into what I'm thinking here, but I think they're doing everything they can to thwart what Donald Trump plans to do. And then domestically, all the blue state governors are coming out and saying we're not going to help you with the deportation of illegals. So, you know, this is just a dying gasp of a, frankly, in my opinion, a dead party. They're not pro-America. They're not, you know. So I think that's their intention, but I don't think it's going to work. This is a short answer. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Our next caller is area code 479. That's 479. Go ahead. Hello, 479.
My first question is, I understand that the first phone call, the first contact that Donald Trump made was with Barzani in Iraq, and I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Well, my understanding is that the Treasury Department has $4 trillion dinar, and Donald Trump has a substantial amount of dinar personally, so it makes perfect sense to me that that would be one of his first calls, if not the first call. He has plans for this country, and $4 trillion in Iraqi dinar in our Federal Reserve is going to be treated very differently from a Trump administration than a Biden and certainly a Harris administration. So that's good news for us, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I think so. I will say this also. After what the man's been through, and he can't run for re-election, he's got nothing holding him back now. I think it's going to be hard to believe what he does when he gets in there because there's so much to fix, and he's the guy that wants to fix it. And all of the people he's bringing in are basically not Washington insiders. These are outside successful business people. They don't play that game. They don't do the Potomac two-step. They're common sense people. They want a return on their time and their money, and so I think we're in a very good place.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you, sir.
Great call.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 480. That's 480. Go ahead. Hello, 480? Hello? Yes, you're on. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Okay. Are we supposed to send back the documents that have been filled out? All the trust
Absolutely not.
documents?
They are your documents.
Okay.
No one's touched those but you. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Second question. If we want to initiate a subtrust for a disability trust, do we contact you and you set that up?
Okay, now, the subtrusts are to hold physical assets. If you have a situation where you need a special needs trust, it just so happens our attorney, Robert Bly, actually wrote a special needs trust that's one of the greatest in the country. A lot of attorneys use them, and they contact our firm for his special needs trust. So after the revaluation, he will be available for our clients to write whatever other trusts they need or want.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate the hard work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 860. That's 860. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. John in Connecticut. How are you?
Yeah. Busy as hell. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, listen. We own a home in Puerto Rico and one in Connecticut. We're selling the one in Connecticut, and we want to move to Puerto Rico permanently. How do I get my dinar from Connecticut to Puerto Rico?
That's a good question. Well, of course, if the revaluation were to occur before you plan to move, then it'll be in USD. So how soon do you plan on moving?
Well, we actually plan on moving by the first of the year.
And are you going to still have homes or businesses or anything on, in the contiguous United States?
Well, we may or may not. That's the problem. We're trying to buy another house in New York, crazy as that sounds, but that's the situation. But I can't at this point. I can't say whether we will or will not own another property in the States.
Okay, then this is if I were you, this is what I would do. There is no way I would take those currencies out of the country to Puerto Rico. It's complicated. There's FinCEN issues, which is having to do with the taxation of transfers of things out of the country. What I would do is I would establish bank accounts and safety deposit box here in the United States. I would put the currencies there. I would also have my trustee named on that safety deposit box, and you probably want to make sure that that trustee has access to that just to make sure everything's okay. And when the currency's revalued, you're going to have to come back here and do the exchange. That's what I would do if I were you, and that's the only way I can answer the question.
Okay, that's not a problem to do that. Okay. Now the last thing is the trustee that I have is pretty sick, and he may not last through this whole thing, So if
then what pardon? I would suggest you do is send us an email saying that you wish to give us your name, the name of your master trust, and say, I wish to replace trustee X with trustee Y, giving us the name of the trustee. You will receive a PayPal invoice for the money to rewrite the trust, and it's like somewhere between $150 and $250 paralegal fee, but you're going to need to execute those documents with the new trustee.
Okay. All right.
I would say. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I know. I was going to say thank you for the info.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll be looking for your email.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Sure. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right now.
Next caller is area code 509. That's 509. Go ahead.
Hello there, Jim. This is out on the left coast. Art out on the left coast.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be interesting to see what develops. I think that the wackos are coming out of the closets, and boy, it's amazing what they're saying they're going to do to try to prevent.
It's Rich. For 4 years, we've heard about saving our democracy, and the first thing they want to do is have the governors and the senators go out there and say, we're going to do everything we can to obstruct your agenda. When the one thing about Trump is he never changed his story. His story is the same every day, all day, for 8 years. They know what he wanted to do. The American people knew what he wanted to do. The media trashed him for what he wanted to do, and then he won by an electoral landslide. So it is, they are who they are. It is what it is. I don't think it's going to fly. He has all kinds of powers. He has the supremacy clause of the Constitution, which basically means the states have to comply. So as a matter of fact, when Texas started to deny the entry of illegals into the country, it was basically, in my understanding, under the supremacy clause, the federal government went to the Supreme Court and said, no, they can't stop us. If we want to let them in, they have to let them in. So we're just going to use their own precedent against them.
Right. Well, along the lines of the gift subtrust, I don't know if I've asked this question before to you, so humor me if I have, because I didn't write it down effectively enough to be able to follow it. Can you, once you have the notary in place and you've got initial individuals and their currencies set up, can you add to that as an addendum after the fact and, include those individuals who you will have currency delegated for? And would that include another notary to facilitate those additions?
I would cover my behind and have a notary. Anything you're doing, the question you have to ask yourself is if the IRS ever audited me, can I substantiate that the following was done pre-RV? And the way to substantiate it is not the date on the document, it's the notarized date on the document. So when you're doing stuff like that, I personally would have it notarized. I'm not saying it won't fly if it's not notarized, but I wouldn't take the chance. I'd have it notarized.
Okay, so that would be, well, change the subject to that. I follow that real well now, and I'll do that. In regards to the monies, or not monies, but the currency that was purchased while boots on the ground, and that the Bank of El Rashid in Baghdad did not, for whatever reason, give you a receipt for those currencies that you purchased. And virtually that's where, when I was boots on the ground, we had a sister company that was at the Hotel Al Rashid, and the bank is another building right adjacent to it. So we would go over while visiting the friends at another sister company and having their dinners and lunches and what have you. We'd go over to the bank, and then you get the currency, and then they give you the currency, but no receipts.
Well, if what I say to anybody that doesn't have a receipt for any reason, I wouldn't personally want to go into the bank without a receipt because, it's a done deal. But if for some reason you do not have the receipt, what you do have is the proof of payment from your bank. The money was wired here or there. So I would take that to the bank, say, look, this is what happened with the receipt, but here's my proof of payment. I bought 3 million dinar in 3 years ago, and here's the proof. It was the money was sent to such and such for the dinar, and I've got the dinar. The bank's sitting there, they want that money in their bank. So unless they are highly suspicious of you, they're probably going to just go ahead and do the exchange.
Okay, there is a wrinkle to that, in that it wasn't until after my mid-tour. I came home, talked to my wife, and what have you, and we decided to go forward with this because I did a lot of research about the potential of it. It wasn't just a wham-bam thing. And so I took cash back with me, and that's how I purchased the dinar going into the Bank of El Rashid. Now, I do have my orders, my conversation, and I can do a letter solidifying that I was there at this time, and then have that notarized prior to that would work. I would think.
Okay, what you also need to do then is you need to have you need to produce an affidavit swearing under penalty of perjury everything you've just told me. So if you go in there with any proof to suggest that you made the purchase, and you have an affidavit, and in the affidavit you explain why you don't have the receipt, but that you purchased it with clean, clear funds of non-criminal origin, et cetera, that will probably fly. Once again, because the bank wants the money.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing this far into it.
And they're not going to be liable if you've got technically, they say, look, the guy produced a legal affidavit under penalty of perjury. We took him at his word,
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting how this far into it that many times I've talked to you, I haven't thought about that before now. So it may not be right, but it's correct. Sounds great. I will do the both affidavits for the gift sub trust with the addendum, adding those individuals to it, and then going back. I have to check and see. I've got the change of station orders. Everything is intact. Plus the DD 214 that they had while I was on the ground too during that period. So I'll compile that and put it together. And I thank you very kindly. You're always a wealth of information and a joy to talk to. And especially now that we're going into this next phase where I think we're all going to be very happy.
I think so too. And those of us that have waited the longest will probably enjoy it the most.
Oh, I hear you. And there's all those lobsters out there have been trying to pull you down ever since, telling you that you're an idiot for doing that. And go, well, those who last best.
It's funny. My favorite car, since I was a kid, I remember as a kid, the first movie I think I went to was a James Bond movie, and he had that Aston Martin, a 1964 Aston Martin. So I say kiddingly that I'm going to buy a 1964 Aston Martin. I'm going to pull up in front of the house of some people that were skeptical of all of this and just rev the engine.
I love it.
And then when they look out the window, I'm just going to wave and cruise by.
You need to have your wife in the passenger seat videoing that so you can see them open up the curtain. So you should be able to put that online to be able to get that. That'd be awesome. Look forward to seeing that.
Okay, I'll work on it. You take care.
All right. You too. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye now. Okay, that was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I'm going to give you our contact information once again because we're really at the 11th hour. And those of you that are aware, have dinar, are aware of Trusts Unlimited, may have some understanding of trust, may have listened to our calls, this may be your last chance to get your affairs in order because I can assure you, you are naked to the wind if you do not have this wealth in a private situation where no one knows what you have and how much of it. So I'll give you our contact information once again. You can contact us by email, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. And by the way, we may be changing that to .net. If we do, it will be in an email, and I'll certainly mention it on our calls. But for the time being, it's trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. Contact us by email or phone. We'll get our package out to you right away. And once you review everything in there and understand what you're doing and why, I think you'll be very satisfied. Thanks so much for listening. Our next call will be next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, unless, of course, something of a dramatic nature happens, in which case we will try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But again, that doesn't happen. Next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye now.